interrelated but separate. One is that people are becoming less religious. That's what secularization hypothesis is about. And second, that religion is driven out of public space, that it becomes private, something private, and doesn't play a role in politics or in public life. Now, with regards to the first part, there are some scholars like Ingelhardt and others who would argue that secularization hypothesis is still true, that overall, if you look through the globe, I think still people are becoming less religious overall. But I think if we look at secularization from the second point of view, from the point of view of its role and prominence in public life, I think one cannot conceivably argue contest the fact that in the last decades, not anywhere, everywhere, but in many different parts of the globe, the role of the religion of the church or churches in public life are increasing. And if we look at Georgia, I think Georgia falsifies secularization concept maybe on both accounts. We have religious boom basically, and I remember in my younger years we were like any other Soviet society, which meant that only old ladies were supposed to be religious, and young people who were religious were considered a little bit not quite normal. Now maybe it's almost other way around. So especially young people are much more religious than elder people, and being religious is a norm, basically. So if you are young and not religious, you are, not typical, let's say so. But it's also obvious that the church is becoming, or the church as an institution, but also religion as an issue, becoming more and more prominent in public life, in political life, and in this we see increase, particularly in the last several years. So we don't really know on both accounts whether this trend of strengthening religion or desecularization has already reached its highest point, or it still has to reach the highest point. So how can we link this to democratization process? Of course, this conventional wisdom of traditional Enlightenment, Voltairean, thinking would be that democratization is one direction and religion is exactly contrary, right? If you are becoming more democratic, then somehow maybe you should become less religious. I think that's not only empirically proven wrong, but I think one may say that contrary is true. That this prominence of religion in public life actually correlates positively with democratization process in many countries. And religiosity is actually part of democratization. I mean, of course I can remember also the England of 17th century, Civil War, or Glorious Revolution. It was political conflict, but it was religious conflict, and one cannot really draw a hard and fast line between religious conflict and political conflict, right? So why should we assume that it should be different in the 21st century? Of course it's different in some way, but it's still, you cannot isolate one from the other. And that's logical, because if you assume that a large part of the population is religious, if there is no secularization in the first sense that people just don't care about religion, if people do care about religion, then it's very hard to imagine how this religiosity of people does not translate into political prominence and public prominence of religion. I think it's impossible, especially when we are at the turning point when some deep transformations occur. So I think that's a breeding ground for strengthening the role of religion, and it's only autocratic government that can afford sidelining religion, in societies where they have some existential or whatever demand for religiosity. And Soviet society was probably like that. Kemalist Turkey was not, of course, as autocratic, but a little bit, so it also could afford to sideline religion, and whether we like AKP or don't like AKP, I mean, it was a democratic reaction also. One of the expressions of democratic relation, and in these many Islamic countries, of course, it was a classical kind of dilemma that you have modernizing autocrats, and position is somehow mobilizing around religiosity. So it's not. I don't think that it's the case in Georgia. I would not see that link in Georgia that autocrats are atheistic and Democrats are more religious. Although one could say that some supporters of opposition in today's Georgia might claim that. I think our government is considered, if not atheistic, then liberal modernizers, and some people in the opposition claim to be much more loyal to Georgia's religious traditions. So that's one aspect, let's say, of complexity of the issue. But now, even though in some societies may be a mobilizing force against autocracy, whether it's true in Georgia or not, it's another point, but theoretically in some countries it's true. But even if it is true, that's not the end of the story, it's also only the beginning of the story, because you can get rid of autocrats. The main issue about the relation between religion and democracy is how compatible is widespread religiosity or strength of the church and prominence of religion in politics, in public politics, how compatible it is with democracy. So how can it be compatible with democracy? I think the main things in democracy are liberty and equality. Elections are also important, of course, but you can be cynical about elections. You don't necessarily need to like elections. You cannot live without them. Obviously, it's indispensable, but you cannot be cynical about liberty and equality. If you are cynical about liberty and equality, you are not a Democrat. So how religion in Georgia is the case, which I will use, how the strength of religion works with or is compatible with religious freedom. And here, of course, I mean historically dominant religion. We cannot be like America, not because America is a bad country, but because America is based on not having dominant religion, while countries like Georgia or Britain, for that case, are based on having dominant religion, right? So when you have a historically dominant religion, when you have historically dominant church, how that works for freedom, for liberty and equality in general, but liberty and equality with regards to religion. I would argue in the last 20 years we had problems with both. We had, of course, we remember many of us, I mean Georgians, and we had quite a few cases of religiously based, religiously motivated violence against the minority confessions. Jehovah's Witnesses were primary targets, but not only them, some Protestant churches, Krishna, supporters, whatever. But for the last 10 years, last 8 years maybe, it's no longer a problem. We have incidents here and there, but I would say that in today's Georgian society, there is consensus in very large part of society that religious liberty should be there, that everybody should be free to worship whatever they believe in. I think that's an important achievement. What about equality? With regards to equality, I think we don't have consensus on that at all. I think we have, and it continues to be a very controversial issue. Of course, the Georgian Party remembers last summer when the Georgian government introduced new legislation which did not make other confessions other than Georgian Orthodox Church equal with it, but sort of more equal. closer. So they're all entities of public law, but Orthodox Church has also special constitutional agreement with the state, which makes it in some sense above the law, one could say. So it's not real equality, but it's a step towards equality. And this step was extremely unpopular. It's still unpopular if you look at public opinion surveys. So one could say that here we have a clash between democracy generally and equality in religious sphere. Arguably, one could say that the government behaved undemocratically. It went against strong majority opinion when the strong majority opinion that believes that in Georgia, Georgian Orthodox Church should have a privileged position and should not be considered on the same level, and made this decision that it should be otherwise. So we have here some kind of controversy between some general conventional understanding of democracy, that government should follow people, and the concept of religious equality. And the last point, I hope I don't talk too long, is about democracy and identity. I think we are used to understanding religion as morality provider somehow. That people are, that public value of religion is seen in that it makes people more moral. So when John Locke, who was mentioned here in the Essay of Toleration, said that essayists should not be tolerated. I guess he understood that he assumed that essayists are immoral people, so you cannot encourage immorality by tolerating essayists. I think in today's world it's changed a little bit. Of course, religion plays an important role in shaping moral understanding of people, but it's really fully compatible with, let's say, so privatized religion which works in private space. But religion became identity provider primarily. In Georgia, I don't think it's much of morality provider. Maybe I am biased, but it's very strong identity provider. But it's not the only one. So there is a clash of how to shape Georgia's modern identity. There are different ways to do it, more liberal westernizing way and some other way which is based on Orthodox religion. So that's become another I think big source of controversy over the future of Georgia because I think there is a dominant trend or dominant strand in this process of construction of new Georgian identity as a European country, as a liberal country, which we may not quite be already, but we strive to be, and that's how it's our super ego, I would say. That's how we see the Georgia we want to be. But there is some kind of alternative vision that this Europeanism is something immoral, it's about undermining Georgia's real cultural identity, etc. And so I would not say it's the same as what the Church says, but at least supporters of this version of Georgia's identity construction appeal to Georgia's religious identity. And that, I think, puts religion at the center really of controversy about how modern Georgia is to be constructed. Thanks.
Thank you very much here for this very nuanced and detailed rich presentation. And now, before opening the floor for the questions from the audience, I will give the chance for our panelists to comment or ask each other if there is an interest. If not, then